This is a Fangirls Going Rogue priority transmission.
All team, give it everything you got!
It's time to fangirl flail with Fangirls Going Rogue.
Count me in.
Never get between a Mandalorian and a weapons package.
This is the way.
News, discussion, and commentary from the female point of view.
You call this a diplomatic solution?
No, I call it aggressive negotiations.
She's as important as he is.
With your hosts, Trisha Barr and Sarah Woloski.
Boy, am I glad to hear your voice.
Strap in, because this is where the fun begins.
I like the sound of that.
Welcome, Yub Cubs, to Fangirls Going Rogue. This is Trisha Barr wishing you a happy start of summer. Premiering on Disney Plus June 4th is The Acolyte, a story set 100 years before the Phantom Menace. We will be hosting our first Zoom chat on June 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time to discuss the first 3 episodes. Right now, we have a special interview with Leslye Headland, the show creator. We joined other fan sites in a roundtable that dives into the themes, world building, and storytelling of the show. We hope you enjoy the discussion.
Hi. So my question for you is, how did your work on previous shows such as Russian Doll influence your vision and direction for The Acolyte?
How did my work on other shows shape the vision? I mean, certainly Russian Doll. I'd say that was an intricate story, obviously, with the Groundhog Day element, having to keep track of this storyline that sort of spiraled down into the heart of what the story was about. And I hope we've achieved sort of the Star Wars version of that with this storyline, with the Rashomon elements, and seeing things from 2 different sides, both between Amandala's characters. Am I allowed to say that? I am. Okay, great. Sorry, you guys. I'm still unclear on what I'm allowed to talk about. So where was I? I was talking about, oh yes, the duality and kind of flipping back and forth between who's good and who's bad. This is a point of view of one character. This is the other point of view from another character. So that's I would say that prepared me really well for the story we ended up telling here.
Hi, Trisha Barr for Fangirls Going Rogue podcast. You, in The Acolyte, you're using one of my favorite archetypes, the witch. A lot of current storytelling is challenging patriarchal tropes about witches. What do you want to bring to the cultural perspective of witches?
Well, I think that they, of course they're witches, and that's an element that George and Dave created with the Clone Wars. But I do think that my version of it is more about a collective that utilizes the Force differently than the Jedi do, and would rather be left alone so that they can develop their own way of manipulating it, use it, whether it's for good or bad is kind of left up to the audience's interpretation of them. So I guess that's how I would be challenging the perspective.
Hi, this is George and Josh Babe with the Holo Files. Leslye, thank you so much. Really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
It seems that one of the great tenets of working at Lucasfilm is collaboration with so many different departments, individuals, things like that. As you worked on The Acolyte, did you consult with other filmmakers who had directed and written other Star Wars stories? I know Rian Johnson had directed one of your first scripts and then obviously did The Last Jedi. I'm not sure if you consulted with him or other Star Wars writers, directors in crafting The Acolyte.
Well, it's interesting. I worked so closely with my designers, and all of them were very well versed in either their fandom for Star Wars or their understanding of it aesthetically. And also, they were very familiar with the aesthetic of the High Republic as well. So we did a lot of trial and error. We did a lot of collaboration. We did an enormous amount of presentations to each other so that all the departments were on the same page. So I do think that that really was the key to making a show like this one. You can't do it on your own. It's got to be between you and your team.
Hi, James Burns from Jedi News here. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. So my question for you is, there's a lot of people out there that have never ever read anything from the High Republic because they just, tune into the films and watch content on Disney Plus. So how would you pitch the Acolyte to them?
Oh, I would say pitching the Acolyte to people who are unfamiliar with the High Republic, I would say this is a fresh entry point. It could definitely elevate the show if you've had the experience of immersing yourself in that in beautiful world. But you certainly don't need to have read anything or know any references to it, because we are taking place a bit closer to the prequels than the High Republic. So hopefully we have enough referencing of the High Republic, but we're not leaning on it narratively to support our story. I would like to think that our story stands on its own.
Hi, Leslye. I'm Gustavo from Triad of the Force. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. My question also has to do with the High Republic. But before getting into the High Republic, Star Wars has, I think, been known a little bit for being slower to embrace diversity in it, not just its casting, but also in the stories it tells about diversity. Through the High Republic and that publishing effort, we have seen a lot of diversity with the characters that are finally introduced, be it with their races or their sexualities, but also the stories that we tell about them. With the Acolyte, how do you embrace that ethos that the High Republic publishing effort has done to not just bring in diverse characters, but also to tell diverse stories?
Well, I hope that, as if you're a Star Wars fan, my hope is that you will notice the different elements of Star Wars that we have brought, other Star Wars media that we have brought into the Acolyte. We're referencing the High Republic with the design of the robes, with including the character of Renester Grow. I think that we're definitely referencing Clone Wars when we explore the witches and the coven that Jodie Turner-Smith leads. So there's that. I think a lot of the fact that we're using practical elements, we're using real sets, that really, I think, lends itself to the original trilogy. And then where the Jedi are in their trajectory is very close to what ends up happening to them in the Phantom Menace. So hopefully we're merging a lot of those storylines to feel more diverse and hopefully exciting because of that.
Hi, Leslye. Jason of This Dad Reads here. This is a big moment, like we've been saying, for the Star Wars book community. I just want to know, what message do you have for the High Republic book fans out there in anticipation of the release of The Acolyte?
Oh, I want to say I love you. Thank you for investing in a world and an era that I think is so new. And I definitely had that experience working on Acolyte. You're diving into something that isn't referencing the live action canon or the Skywalker saga. So you're willing to dive in at a particular entry point and enjoy the stories of the Jedi and what George created in a different context. So I would hope that you have a similar experiencing, similar experience watching The Acolyte. Sorry. My mouth is really dry. Okay.
Thanks for chatting with us. William Devereaux from the Ion Canon podcast. George Lucas loved symmetry and parallels in Star Wars. In many ways, The Acolyte feels like a reflection of the Phantom Menace, kind of as you alluded to earlier, from the use of the Force to create life, to the Jedi testing process, eventually admitting an older child to be trained as a Jedi. And of course, twins are a Star Wars staple. I'm assuming this was intentional. And if so, how did you balance drawing the parallels to the Phantom Menace and other films without making it feel too similar?
It was difficult, for sure. you want to hit all the particular tropes that make something feel Star Wars. Like I said, those practical sets, the familial clashing, the struggle between master apprentice, father daughter, sister sister. All of those things, I think, are elements of George's stories. Ahsoka and Anakin, Luke and Anakin, Obi-Wan and Anakin. I was hoping to embody that particular, all of those particular tropes and elements. It was daunting. Hopefully, we've achieved it in a way that feels both fresh, but also very reverent to what George has created.
Hi, Leslye. It's Charlotte and Caitlin from Skytalkers. So great to talk with you today. You recently said in an interview that the episode The Wrong Jedi from the Clone Wars was a favorite and provided some inspiration to the Acolyte. What was it about that episode that stayed with you and maybe found its way into the Acolyte?
Well, there are two elements of that episode that I think show up in the Acolyte. First of all, the wrongful accusation of a character that they've committed a crime, a really horrible crime that they didn't do. So there's definitely that element. It's one of the things that starts the story off. And then the other thing that I love about that episode is Ahsoka's choice to leave the Order, which is something I hadn't really tuned into as like an option that someone could do. So I loved the idea that Osha has left the Order and sort of created a life for herself outside of that identity. So those were the two things from that episode that I was extremely inspired by.
Hello, Leslye. You work closely with Neil Scanlon and the Critch Cantina team at Pinewood to create all kinds of really, really cool stuff. Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Oh, absolutely. Neil embraced me immediately, which I was so grateful for. He was very supportive of my ideas and my requests. He does so much. When you get to work with him, whether it was the mask with that element of horror with the smile. That was something that we worked on for a really long time in terms of how to construct it. The character of Basil was someone that I said, I want to do this with a guy in a suit like the old days. I don't want this to be a CGI character. What do you think? How can we execute it? And he worked so hard for months on creating the design of that character, making that character work. The droid Pip was so much fun to work with. Amandla would joke that it was like a little Mercedes-Benz in her pocket because every time she was done with a take, they would come and take it from her because it was so it was remote controlled by a puppeteer who was excellent and actually worked with Amandla in rehearsals so that the character felt very much like, so that the droid felt very much like a character. So yeah, Neil was instrumental in all of that.
Hi there, Dan's there from Coffee with Kenobi. Looking forward to seeing what everyone thinks about the Acolyte, as I'm sure you are. And now this question, I don't want to spoil anything, so bear with me. What can you share about May's mission to kill Jedi without the use of a lightsaber? Because it is a unique fighting choice. What inspired that decision creatively?
The choice for May to attack Jedi without a weapon was to put a new spin on how you would attack a Jedi. Meaning this is a time period where not a lot of people are running around with a lightsaber unless you're a Jedi. And so therefore attacking a Jedi without a weapon would be a daunting task and something that would hopefully intrigue the audience.
Hey, this is Sarah with Skywalking through Neverland. And you talked about all the inspirations of Star Wars that you're trying to involve in this show. Well, music is a huge thing that connects Star Wars. And I just wondered, is there a specific point in the narrative that you directed the composer, Michael Abels, to use any particular Star Wars themes or sounds or instrumentation to further that connection?
I didn't really start out giving any direction to Michael. He's brilliant. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning musician. He obviously worked on Jordan Peele's films, which is how I just, was introduced to him. There was an element in the show that I felt needed to feel like John Williams, but also had to have an eerier, darker edge to it to tie into the tone of the show. Initially, I didn't really give him a lot of direction. It was more once we got into specific cues that I would say I would give certain direction, like this just doesn't feel, very Star Warsy to me. Or he would say, I think this is a really huge moment because a lightsaber is being pulled out, and I would say, yeah, but it's the bad guy pulling out a lightsaber. So, and we would kind of have those really spirited conversations about how to execute or how to support choices that were elements of Star Wars that we've seen before, but be specifically in his perspective and voice and point of view as a composer.
Yep. You can also share your thoughts with us on social media. Here's where you can find us. Visit us over at fangirlsgoingrogue.com. For Twitter and Instagram, Fangirls Going Rogue, at FG Going Rogue, Trisha at Fangirl Cantina, Sarah at Jedi Tink, email contact at fangirlsgoingrogue.com, Facebook, just type Fangirls Going Rogue. We do have a private Facebook group. You'll need to answer the 3 questions to join us. Please go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a positive 5-star review. We need your reviews so more people can find us. Until next time, yub, yub.